Yeah, totally.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Boom! What's up, everyone? Welcome to Simulation. I'm your host, Alan Sakian. Today, we're sitting down with Anamita Guha.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited.
Oh.
Thank you so much.
Double handshake.
Yes, yes. Always. On the other hand, I should show you what I learned from the Connect guys. So they're working on human connectivity and peace. So you put your hand out like this.
Do our hands have to match?
Yeah, let's hand match. And then you just do this.
Okay.
And then you just you look at the other person's eyes.
Okay.
And then you just feel. And then you go.
Okay. You know why this works?
Why?
It's two things. So when our hands are touching, and if it's after like 9 or 10 seconds, our bodies release oxytocin.
Yeah.
And then eye contact makes that better.
Yep. And
then the vibrational sound depends on like a chakra.
Yeah.
So different, if
Yeah.
you believe in that, right? Like different chakras have different forces. There's one that's for connection, that's a sound.
That's right. Oxytocin, trust, both eyes and touch, and then the vibration that you're sending through your body through the humming. Yeah. The guys, I love these two from Connect. They're really trying to bring human connection to more people around the world.
I wonder if it would have been more powerful if it was two hands.
They sometimes do this one. That's good. And then they sometimes do this one in circles.
Okay.
They'll do this.
Okay.
And then they'll do it in a circle. I'm just very in love with touch and hug and like human connection in general is so important. And,
yeah.
Okay, you saw the title. We're talking about IBM Watson. Anamita Guha is a product manager at IBM Watson. She's working on the developer labs team across AR, VR, across just getting these tools out to more people. Chatbots, we're going to talk about that today. I'm really excited.
Yeah.
Here we go, let's
I'm
do
always
it.
Excited.
Let's do it. New cognitive science from Berkeley
That's
as well.
right.
Yeah, exactly. So some linguistics in there, like really passionate about communication. So we are too. So let's do this. So tell us a little bit about this background. You know, where were you born? What led you to Berkeley?
Yeah. So I was born in India, actually. Moved around a lot. One of my bingo fun facts that I share with people is that my first 5 birthdays were in 5 different places. And I think because of that, I learned a lot about different people and just different environments. I lived in different parts of India. I lived in Kansas. I lived in California. So it was just a very broad spectrum. The one thing that was constant in my life was just people. I've always been a person that got energy from being around people. And I owe that to my parents, who were very, very social creatures. Growing up, I remember going to 3 parties a night. And they're not they just had a lot of different social circles. So I just met people from different walks of life and different socioeconomic classes, different races. And I was just very immersed and exposed to that from an early age. So as I got older, I felt really tied to the human experience and learning about what motives other people. So that was one thing that drove me to CogSci, because I was very fascinated by the human brain and kind of unlocking the keys to why we do what we do. The brain is also one of the 4 frontiers of science that's not solved. So there's I think the ocean, space, the brain. They also talk about super small, micro quark-esque things. We don't know answers to them yet. And then the other thing that I would say is I also grew up in the Silicon Valley.
We talk about those 4 a lot on the show.
Yeah. So I grew up in the Silicon Valley.
I like your diverse background and culture too. That's a big indicator of knowing that individuality, collectivism, across borders, all that good stuff.
Yeah, and then there's a lot to learn always.
There's so much
right?
to learn, like you're saying,
Yeah. I also grew up in the Silicon Valley, so I had new tech gadgets in the house all the time, and formed a very interesting relationship with technology from an early age. I started coding. I'm not a coder by trade, but designing websites and different things when I was 9 years old, and just kind of ran with that as a side hobby, side hustle when I was younger. So CogSci was a very good condense of the 2 things I liked.
And this is how people get birthed into the world. Yeah. They get 5 birthdays in 5 different countries when they're first growing up, and just like that, all of a sudden your perception is shifted into new dimensions, new breadths and depths. So that's a good foundation, and then going into having all these new gadgets. And okay, so then CogSci, fell in love with linguistics. Tell us a little bit about
so
that.
I went into Berkeley. CogSci is a interdisciplinary major at Berkeley. Different schools have it done in different ways, but at Berkeley you learn 6 different subjects. Linguistics is one of them, psychology, anthropology, neuroscience, engineering, and philosophy.
That's great.
Yeah.
That is so good.
And since we were in Berkeley, which is like an engineering mecca, we were housed under electrical engineering. Okay. So I learned a lot about brain-machine interfaces and different things there, but I wanted to, I started off with neuroscience, and then I realized I kind of like the big picture a little bit more. Yeah. The science I love, and it explains the big picture, but the big picture is really where I'm tied to. So, like, the 2 things I really liked was the psychology and the linguistics. So, like, how thought shapes, or how language shapes our thought, and how like different cultures have different words for different things, and how does that actually change the way you perceive and carry yourself in the world? Yeah,
especially in Europe when you're just taking a 1-hour train to a different country, and then they have a word for something that you don't have a word for in your culture and language, then you're like, whoa. And I think in your example there were like a bunch of different ways to say the word blue, and then that gives you a bunch of different understandings of different shades. Or in India there's like a bunch of different ways to say love.
Yeah.
Right, and like over a couple dozen ways, and then I guess here it's just only a couple really ways of love, and then I guess lust, and there's other ones, but they're affection, but they're different. They're also different, but...
The other thing I find interesting is like gender roles and gender pronouns in words. So there was a study that came out where like in French and Japanese, or German, those languages, you attach a gender pronoun to make it feminine or masculine, like
Spanish,
the table.
O or A,
so then when you ask people to assign adjectives to it, then they're going to attach more like feminine adjectives or masculine adjectives. So you think of it differently. So like the basic example is key. So in one language, I think it's French and not Japanese, I keep saying that, French and German. One's feminine, one's masculine. The feminine noun, that crew, when you would describe key, they'd say like delicate, gold, whereas when it was masculine, they'd say like sharp, functional.
Yeah, that is also very interesting. That kind of nuance to language is so cool, and it seems to be, Spanish is like that. I'm trying to think of. I think Russian has some like that, but I'm really fascinated by linguistics. George Ziff was actually the first linguist that really inspired me. Ziff's law, because it follows a Pareto distribution, and then you're like, 1 out of every 6 words we say is the word the. Yeah. And then you're like, oh my God. And then just, the first only couple of words in the English language, the most popular words like the, of, and, which, to, are like half of everything we say. And it's just nuts to follow. The linguistics is like that. And then it's applicable across all languages. So they do so, and this also really applies to confidence and courage, because the more that you say things like I'm empowered to feel like I can make an impact, and that what I'm doing is important, and that people respect me, and that they give me recognition, that whole process is that's the way that your language is forming your thought, and then other people's language is forming thought. So it's all so important and interconnected when we communicate.
Totally, yeah.
And now we're bringing that to technology.
Yeah.
Okay, so, all right, so then how was this transition from Berkeley to a couple of jobs prior to Watson? What were you learning along the way, and how did you end up getting to Watson?
Yeah, so when I was in college, I actually wanted to go to some sort of like clinical setting, and I actually ended up founding my own company when I was in college. It was my first foray into tech on my own.
Nice.
Worked on it for like a full year, and ended up exiting from that. And at that point, I was like, I don't know if I want to do that, and I want to be in tech. So I just did a blanket search for cognitive science. And I got a job as a product manager at a mobile ad tech startup. And while I was working there, my role was to create new ad units for people around the world that are playing games. And it was actually really fun for me because I came from a background in research, and I was running about 30 or so A/B tests a day. So I was researching at a very high scale and very quickly. And what was awesome about my product was that it transcended different parts of the world, different classes, different demographics, everything. So I was able to pull out insights like people in China respond to the color red because they associate it with royalty, whereas people in the US, that's like a stop, like don't do that. So understanding, like
Cool.
it was like a very, like, I supercharged my brain with knowledge of human behavior. And I was able to do that and design different ad units. And it was almost like, I call it dark UX, or like designing for behavior. So if my goal is to get them to click on an ad, how can I almost manipulate the end user to clicking on the ad? And that's how we made money. And it was interesting because you can like...
So Cambridge Analytica of you.
Well, I didn't stay there forever. But yeah.
Yeah, but it can be used for good as well. If you're trying to communicate a message of peace or
Totally.
of other things, then you can
Totally.
figure out that, oh, China cares more about the color red. They think it's loyalty, so we're going to add some red in
Yeah,
our...
I mean, it goes back to connection. How do you connect with the other group of people or a certain group of people you want to connect with? So I loved working there. It was really interesting for me to just learn about everything and everyone so quickly. And then from there, I went to a couple of other startups, worked in analytical roles, creating products for analytics and almost integrations. I played a partnership role to see how our company's analytics could help other people make smart decisions. And I'm a firm believer in, like, we live in this like big data world. It's not about big data, but it's about smart data. So being able to figure out which ones make sense and how we understand diagrams and how we want to see the information we want to see. So that's what I had been working on. And after a couple of years there, I realized I really wanted to go back to more like traditional AI and more of the roots of what I liked. And I had known about IBM and IBM Watson for a very, very long time, like pre-Jeopardy days, because I studied research papers and stuff from IBM research back when I was in school. So I had a friend at IBM Watson who was like, hey, come join us. And it was kind of like a serendipitous join this team, and now I'm working to create developer tools for developers building with Watson. That's awesome.
It's been a little over a year, right?
Yeah.
I'm glad you had another example of culture and linguistics and within technology and its importance with, even before we're getting into chatbot and that interface, and we're even still talking about the way that an ad is designed. Okay, so you had now you're starting with the developer tool. So IBM Watson's got 100 or more of these like developer tools that companies can use that are either free or paid. Yeah, so the way I look at Watson is that there's a bunch of, it's like most people think of Watson to be this like supercomputer, and it's more of a technology that we have available for everyone to use for AI. And when we refer to AI, we think of it as not artificial intelligence. I mean, it is artificial intelligence, but it's augmented intelligence. So we've created a technology or an avenue for developers and the world really to build and augment the world that they're building. And so we have a bunch of microservices or APIs that different developers can use for whatever they're trying to augment. So Watson Assistant can be used to build a chatbot or any form of conversational interface, an Alexa skill or a Google Home or an IoT device. That was Watson Interfaces. That was subsection interfaces of Watson? No, Watson Assistant. Watson Assistant. Yeah, so that's the technology you would use to build an interface. Yeah. Okay, so now there's one branch called Watson Assistant, okay, and that's for interfaces. Cool. For conversations. For conversations. Yeah. Watson Assistant for conversations. Yeah, okay, they're just technologies that you would pull in. So there's like Watson Visual Recognition, and that's used to help recognize faces or read text. They recognize 6 different things, and we have a bunch of these services that different people can use and what are the other bring ones? Into your product. This is really great. Assistant. There's Assistant, there's Visual Recognition, there's Watson Discovery, and that's used to, you can feed it paper, like lots of papers, and help drive insights and like key words, themes maybe.
There's like an empathy suite that we have, which is really cool, where you can analyze other people's tone if it's voice recording, and or you can read text and determine if they're angry, so emotion detection. And you can use that in conjunction with Assistant. So a really good use case for that is customer service bots. So if someone's calling in or typing in, you can cater the decision tree or what the chatbot will say based on how that person is feeling.
Yeah.
What else is there?
That's a really good example, yeah.
Yeah, and I can keep going. There's like 11 of them.
There's 11 of them?
There's 11, maybe 14. It changes, I don't know where we are right now, but there's like a handful of them, and we're growing.
And the most popular one is Assistant?
Yeah.
And then visual recognition?
Visual recognition, Assistant. I don't know if it's I guess it depends on what you define as popular, right?
Most popular
like most
in terms of used.
Yeah. Assistant.
Okay, Assistant is. And so do Google and Amazon and Apple use Assistant?
So they have their own like in-company technologies that they're building. What you'll notice, like for Alexa or for like Google Home, for example, if we're just talking about the house home assistant space, you will build something on their platform and you can only release it to their device. Whereas with IBM, when you build something on Watson, we're platform agnostic. So you can use our technology and then you add it to different applications, interfaces. So it could go on a Google Home or it could go on an Amazon Alexa. And like we've created partnerships with these companies to bring AI to them. So a couple weeks ago, we announced a big partnership with Apple to use Core ML and Watson visual recognition to help recognize images, I guess, offline. And that is something that we're helping the iOS developers use, and they're now able to like code in Swift and also incorporate Watson to it.
Mm-hmm. And that's for recognizing photos when you're not connected to the internet.
Correct.
So as in the native Photos app will start recognizing the photos?
Yeah, or if you're a developer that wants to build something, then you don't need an internet connection to do it. So if you're traveling maybe and you want to use translation of text, you can do it offline with this app. So things you don't need an internet connection for. Okay,
so let's keep going with this because this is really so much to unpack. Developer labs.
Yeah.
All right. So where does AR and VR fit into the developer tools? What's that most used for?
Yeah. So developers they come in different flavors, right? Like you could be an iOS developer, a mobile developer, an Android developer, web developer, and then there's now a concept of AR, VR developers that are creating these virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality experiences. So whatever platform they're using to build on, you can add AI to that. And you would want to bring Watson into that as an option. So it is a new nascent developer market, I would say. And as the developer labs, we're always keen to identify these markets that are growing and what technologies are going to be more pervasive in our world moving forward. So we want to be able to empower these developers to have AI in them. So
is this like you leveraging Watson with Unity?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the Unity example is how you can use Watson Assistant, speech to text, text to speech, and then if you want to add empathy suite, other things you can. But you can have voice commands or speech interactions in a virtual reality interface. So we have, last year we announced a partnership with Ubisoft, which is a VR game that you're in Star Trek, you're in the command center, and you can have commands issued. So you don't actually have to press buttons, but it's a very interactive game now where you can be like warp speed, red alert, different things, and it uses Watson to recognize that and also take actions from there.
So it's voice to text, and then the text is processed and then made decisions.
Yeah.
Okay, so how many AR, VR labs are now using Watson tools?
I don't have a number for that. I wouldn't say AR, VR labs, but I'm sure there are a lot of independent developers that are building with Watson. If you go to the Unity Asset Store as a Unity AR, VR developer, you'll be able to download the Watson SDK, and then they can add voice commands and different things onto their system.
Okay, and then the developer tools are also trying to be used for things like blockchain and open sourcing.
Yeah, I work in a completely open sourced environment. We want to, I'm a firm believer in like when one of us succeeds, all of us will, because we're working in new technologies, right? So we're all trying to like move the needle in a sense. So by open sourcing it, we're able to help others move the needle. And my team works on different Watson services and developer tools for them. My larger organization focuses on blockchain or IoT, more emerging technologies, cloud and container services, how we can bring those together and bring developers onto our IBM platform.
So the blockchain and open source involvement is because you're trying to bring the developer tools to those communities, right?
Yeah. So. But
it's also happening internally, is what you're saying? You're also.
It's happening internally and externally. Yeah. So for blockchain, IBM has a specific stance on blockchain, and I am not well versed enough to actually articulate that. But what we're building is we're releasing this like Hyperledger fabric that enterprises and developers can use to build something on the blockchain. And the example we use there is like tracking, maybe like food tracking that goes from like, if you think of a fishmonger and we pick it up in Japan, every single person in the chain that touches it until it comes to your plate. So those sort of use cases rather than like a private network that like Bitcoin is built on. So there's what blockchain can be done, like what can be done with blockchain is undetermined right now. There's so many things that can be done, and there's an entire team at IBM that's working on that.
Okay, and then one of your roles is to get the developer tools out to more people working as well in the blockchain space as well?
Yeah, so I don't focus on blockchain. My peer is creating tools for developers that are building on blockchain. I'm more so creating tools for developers that are building AR, VR, conversational interfaces, chatbots, voice bots. And like visual recognition, like Watson services.
And then there's also another part of this that's for IoT as well. So there's another whole part of Watson that's developer tools are being built out for IoT.
Correct. And then also for people that are onboarding to the IBM cloud and using different container services like Kubernetes and Docker.
What is that again?
So it's a way to make your system run faster and organize like your back-end system. So when you have things in the cloud, you can containerize them and have like little mini computers almost.
Yeah. That sounds way more efficient than having it all just trying to process without these cubes. Use Kubernetes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They host an event called KubeCon.
KubeCon, is that named after someone or?
I actually have no idea.
Kubernetes. Containerize the data that's in the cloud and then optimize it. Yeah.
Containerize.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so all right, let's do another visual now.
Cool.
So we have IBM Watson, and then we have the developer tools that go down. So then there's a team working on the IoT developer tools, a team working on the blockchain developer tools, which you don't do, but that is what's happening.
Yep.
And then there's a team working on the AR, VR tools, which you do work with that. And then there's a team that's working on the chat interface, or the human interfaces, assistant interface, that stuff. And then you also work on those developer tools.
Correct.
Okay, so now we know, let's say, are those the four kind of like the IoT, the blockchain, the AR, VR, and then the interfaces? Are those the
So I think of it in three.
In three?
There's emerging tech, and that includes blockchain, IoT.
Oh, okay.
There's cloud and containers, and that includes containerizing cloud, all of that. And then there's Watson.
Okay.
And then underneath Watson would be like AR, VR, conversational interfaces, any of the Watson services that we started.
Things that you listed at the beginning.
Correct.
Okay, so we did, cloud was over here, emerging tech. Emerging tech, cloud, and then Watson.
Yeah.
Watson, cloud, emerging tech.
I think of Watson, if you want to be more broad, it'd be AI and analytics.
Okay, yeah, AI and analytics. Yeah, because you're also providing insights into the data.
Well, we have a lot of Watson services that allow you to get insights. So there's different, and then you can also like attach analytics to the other services. So an example is there's an AR tool that's built, it's open source, anyone can use it, where you can manipulate data in AR with your voice. So you put on maybe a Microsoft HoloLens, and then you can see think like data scatter plots, and you can say like, show me all of the data from this date to this date of people in San Francisco, and then it'll change it.
I know, Meta's so cool. Yeah, they're so cool. I've been loving watching and retweeting their videos. I'm all about that life. I'm so ready to just freaking wear that and just experience. Because HoloLens is good. I mean,
another discussion.
Another discussion. But
sure.
That's so interesting. I'm so excited about democratizing like education and getting all these unique insights in the 3D world rather than this 2D like computer screen.
Data, I think, is a great example because you literally have another dimension, right? So instead of looking at a 2D bar graph, you can see other things and drive different insights that you would physically not be able to before.
Yeah.
Your brain doesn't work that way, you know?
And there's so much of it, like you said, it's not just about the amount of data, but the quality also.
Yeah.
Like what's the how are you running machine learning on the data sets to?
Yeah, our CEO Ginny always says, 80% of the world's data is actually privately owned. So there's so much data out there that different corporations and companies are owning. And they can do so much with that, right?
Yeah. I'm ready for the decentralized AI economy. That's what Dan Gailey was on our show talking about. These horizontal marketplaces of data where Amazon's opening up with IBM's opening up with Google's opening up with Apple, and they're all just working together and Facebook, and that's because the companies that don't open up will get left behind. So I'm really interested by that.
I think they'll catch up. They're like, oh, we have our data now, and then we'll all just move forward.
Cool. Yeah, and the insights will be so much more useful and profound for us after the data sets are open rather than the closed ones.
Yeah, and like if you think of the applications for like human good, right? Like if there's a natural disaster, how can we get the right need you have to you as soon as possible, right? So being able to bring in all the different forces, maybe from the government, from what you use and what you need, right? We can make those connections faster and get it to you.
Yeah. Ship me my damn product that I want within 10 seconds now. Now I want it within 10 seconds. It's getting ridiculous, the demand and the supply and how we're doing it. Okay, I like the emerging tech, the cloud, and then IBM Watson, AI and analytics. So, all right, now let's go back to unpacking the AI and analytics side of things, because this is kind of where your sweet spots are. So, okay, so now under the assistant, we have the conversations that, whatever, with Google Assistant's having, Siri, Amazon, Alexa. Then what are the main IBM ones? Where is IBM providing most of the?
So similar to what I was saying like before, right? Like the Google has something, Amazon has something, Apple has their HomePod, Siri. We're not creating a device. If someone is an IBM, I'm not aware of it. But what we are doing is creating the ability for you to add intelligence to that. So like a layman's developer or a startup can use our technology to build their own assistant, build their own chatbot, build their own voice bot. Or we have this cute little robot that we use when we teach students, and like I'm involved with like Girls Who Code, so like how do we get them interested in tech? So we have a little robot that we create out of cardboard called TJ-Bot, named after IBM's founder Thomas J. Watson, and you can talk to it. And you can also have like lights or different like motors to like move the hand to indicate different things. And that's something you talk to. You can have smart mirrors, smart TVs, whatever it may be, and then conversation AR, VR. So all of that falls under conversational interfaces and Watson Assistant. So that's like the core technology that you'll use, and then everything else becomes like a signal service to it to amplify power.
Okay, so So TJ Bot, I think I remember attending a meetup where I learned from a developer that was evangelizing IBM's tools like 2 years ago. He brought a little TJ Bot in, and it was super fun to watch him doing the evangelizing. It was super fun. So, okay, so you were mentioning, we take all these different, so I want to get to Girls Who Code and STEM. We'll get there as well. That's really cool. So you take TJ Bot or anything that I'm building into the world, and if I want to add some sort of intelligence to it, is that tool free for me to use? So
you have the TJ Bot. You want to use something called a Raspberry Pi. Do you know what that is? It's like a small little, like think of it as a computer. It's like a very small little computer that attaches onto that. And you have to buy that. If you get like a TJ Bot kit, they all come together. But you can take the Raspberry Pi and attach it to anything. So like displays, your microphone, whatever you want. And then to use the Watson services, it comes in different tiers.
Is that basically a motherboard with a very small Intel chip or something on it?
Yeah. I don't know the details of it, but it is a small,
like
exactly.
That. Okay.
Yeah. And then you can connect it to lights. You can connect it to, you can even hardwire it to your computer. You can connect it to a motor to move like the TJ Bot's arm. Different things there.
Okay, and then continue.
And then, so to actually connect it to the Watson services, it comes in different tiers. So our first tier, which is our simplest tier, is free. So anyone can build on it and get started. And then from there, depending on your usage, that's when we'll engage conversations of how we're going to pay for it. So large enterprises that have huge volumes is going to be different than us getting started. Or it allows you to kind of like try and buy.
Sweet. And then based on volume, so for example, let's say that, let's use the mirror one, that's fun.
Sure.
So, okay, so there's a Raspberry Pi on my mirror, and let's say that what would be a good use case for it? I don't know, maybe you put a camera on it as well, and then it does things like analyze how you're, maybe you didn't get enough of sleep, or maybe you look over like you've gained a couple pounds, or that shirt doesn't match those shoes. Okay.
You can also use a mirror to give you information. So there's hospitals testing this right now, where the mirrors in the hospital rooms are actually intelligent mirrors, and you can go there and be like, patient's vitals, and you'd like announce that, and then it'll show that onto the mirror. Yeah,
exactly. So like your calendar for the day, or your incoming messages.
Yeah, so like for us, that might make more sense. I would love to have a mirror that I'm looking at in the morning, getting ready, and be like, okay, call my Lyft or Uber now, right? Or like, what time do I need to be here?
Or Anamita is sexy.
Maybe, like a mirror on the wall type thing, right? Yeah. There's always need for affirmations in the world, right?
Yeah. You looking hella good today, girl. I'm like, thank you. I knew it, mirror.
How's my hair?
Yeah. Okay.
You can maybe camera and take a selfie for me. I don't even need to do it.
Okay, so then the amount of data that it's then using Watson for, maybe like 10 requests a day or something?
So it depends by service. So for Watson Assistant, it's per API call. So every time you send a signal and when you're chatting, for visual recognition, it's images recognized.
And is it like 10 are free, or like 10 per day are free, or?
It depends. Like, it depends on your usage. And it's I think definitely more than 10. And then after that, it's a charge of like a very small amount for like every call. It's like 0.01 cent or something like that.
Okay.
But
got it.
I don't have the pricing memorized, so I just go to our website to get it there.
So after like maybe 1,000 calls, it's $1 or something?
Yeah.
That's pretty cheap, isn't it?
Yeah, but if you think of 1,000 calls, right? Like, if this conversation was completely chat, right?
Yeah.
Like our hi, hello.
This would have been definitely a couple thousand calls, right?
Yeah.
That's
our 3 yeahs right now are 3 calls.
Yeah. True. Because and now I guess this might be a good time to go into. Let's go into that. Okay, so You had the linguistics background, and then we have the chatbot. Okay, so, and this is, the Chat for Good is also part of the one of your also give backs to young girls as well. So we'll get to that and Girls Who Code, as well as I want to talk to you about FIRST Robotics as well.
Okay.
But that's towards the end. As we go down here, as we go to chatbots, and we leverage your linguistics background, and now we have your AI and your computer background. What is going on right now in the space? We were just talking about these yeahs. This is, I wrote down that I really wanted to talk to you about the eyes. Yeah. Because I don't even need to say words.
Well, so there's two types of communication, right? There's verbal, and then there's nonverbal, right? Yeah. And eyes is part of nonverbal. And the stat, I think, is 93% of communication, and the number changes between like the 92 to 96 range of communication is nonverbal.
That's intense.
Your eyes and hand movements, how like body language, right? So when you are texting,
touch.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So when you're texting versus talking on the phone versus in person, like if you just think of how your interactions are, you get a lot more about the world when it's face-to-face in person versus texting.
Or even phone call. Yeah. I mean, you get inflection cadence.
Yeah, you get more, right? So when you're creating a bot or a conversational interface.
Text is just such a bad medium. Yeah. I mean, it's just such a bad medium. It's good, but it's also so bad. You know how many miscommunications occur via text all the time? And people like read into them the wrong way, and it's like, I didn't actually mean that.
And then it's evolving new like languages, like emoji talk or like
talk. And then we're limited by the bandwidth of our meat sticks pressing there, like versus the voice.
Do you ever like voice text?
Oh, I always voice text. It's so much faster. I love voice text. And then the one time where you say like a paragraph and you look at your phone and nothing typed, you're like, damn it. Because it didn't have a good enough of a connection. Yeah. Okay, so over 90% is nonverbal.
Yeah, so I always highlight this when I'm working with anyone that's doing conversational design in early phases of their bot development, because if you're creating a chatbot, it's very different than when you're creating a voice bot. So if you're creating an Alexa skill, the way we talk is very different from the way we type. And then if you're creating a conversational entity in AR, VR, you get this dimension, you get hand movements, you get all of that. So you change your conversation. So you have to be aware of that.
Via text, you probably wouldn't get, as you're maybe typing, there's no room for the chatbot to message something while you're typing up the message to it.
Some chatbots can.
Even while you're typing it. But for example, when I'm speaking to the chatbot, then as I'm maybe telling it about my day, it can say something like, or whatever, or that's so interesting, or whatever, right? And that way it actually seems like I'm still talking, but it's giving me a little reply as we go. So now, I mean, that decision tree is very fascinating to me too, is when, and this is part of that empathy suite, but when do you figure out how to plug in a little?
So I think it comes down to the use case of your bot, right? So why are you creating this? So earlier we talked about customer service, right? So in customer service use cases, you don't want to be talking to a bot or a human or anyone for that long. You just want your problem resolved, right? But if it's a chatbot that's being used to, for habit formation for humans or to teach you something, right? Or therapy bots are a big thing now. You want it to be more of a communication. You want to establish a trust, and it's very different than going in, getting your solution, and leaving. So
they didn't even leave me a review. I did so well.
So it's very like. It's very context specific, and it's very not just like what kind of bot medium it is, but it's what kind of conversation it's going to be. And then even within it, it's also like environmental and contextual. So if it's a chat bot on Facebook versus SMS versus Slack versus like a web interface, people are interacting with them differently because people have different mental models for each thing. And then the same thing with like a car that you talk to, you're going to be very different than when you're at home with your Google Home or Alexa. So as you get started to build, I encourage everyone to be like, okay, let's take 20 steps back and figure out like, who are you creating this for? What problem are you solving for them? And why do we care? And then let's build it. Because now there's like a lot of people that are like, I need a bot and I need this because it's the new cool thing to do, but maybe you don't need one.
Mm-hmm. And I really enjoy your examples. That was a really good one. We're always trying to like solve the problem solving for your customer service stuff, and that's always like, get in, get out. Ah, thank goodness that's done. Now that's off my to-do list. Versus the process of build, basically, coming home to the speaker that's on the table, to you, the system that's on the table, and being able to request food or request a conversation or request information or request to learn from it for a period of time about a subject that you're interested in. That becomes much more like, oh crap, that's like a 15-minute intimate conversation with an assistant versus in and out.
Bots that are games, right? Like you're doing that for leisure and entertainment. So like there's Alexa skills where you can like name that tune or do different things, or bots that will like teach you different words every day. And that's something you're doing for yourself, and people play games for hours.
How many bots are there that do things like the word per day or the president per day or the country fact per day or the star system per day or whatever?
I don't have stats on it because it's in different ecosystems.
Let's get into that space.
But
I love education tools like that.
Yeah, but I will say like the entire like voice community is growing like 4x. So like and I'm not going to quote Amazon numbers because I'm going to get them wrong, but like where we are last year to where we are now is like exponentially greater, and it's growing month by month.
And what are the people that are being hired for that? People that know how to take like the developer tools that Watson makes, but then also people that know how to like the human interface designed with robots and machines.
It could be anyone. It could be you and me.
Linguists,
like, right? If we're creating, like remember when the whole like app economy boomed, right? So when the iPhone came out, everyone's creating apps. Now everyone's creating Alexa skills or Google Actions. Anyone can build it. They have their own developer ecosystem.
That's what they're called, skills and actions.
Yeah, it's Alexa skills, Google Actions. And then when they're building it, the developer gets to make the choice of how I want to build it. So you can use like the skill kit to build an Alexa skill. And then if you want to add AI to that, you can bring in Watson. Or you can bring in the other like bot frameworks.
Damn. Skills and actions.
Yeah.
It's the first time hearing about them. That's so cool.
It won't be the last time.
It's probably 4Xing from here. Till next year.
Yeah, next year I'll be like, how many times have you done it? You're like 4.
Yeah, or for sure more. Hopefully I keep having really great conversations with people. Hopefully I can introduce, we can on the show, introduce more of what Watson's doing as well as more of what is being done with the chatbot interfaces. Especially for educational purposes, I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, so chatbots are very easy to build.
Tell us about that process. Yeah.
Like most chatbot development tools, to get started, it's an interface. You don't need a background in coding. So like one of the reasons why my partnership with Girls Who Code exists is because we're building chatbots. We're teaching girls to build chatbots, specifically empathetic chatbots, but if you have no background, you can get up and running with a chatbot in a couple of hours. And that's because there's all these developer tools and different interfaces that you can work with to get you started. And it's only getting easier to build. And then where the actual technical juices come in is when you're connecting it with different services. For example, on my team.
What does the piecing of it look? You said no coding background. It's visual.
Yeah, it's like a WYSIWYG drag and drop. Like I want to create this. I want to create this.
So it'd be like it'd be like give you an example of an incoming message, and then it'd give you maybe a decision tree of like and then you could type in what one option is, what one option is, what one option is, and then it would be like, okay, what about from there? Then and then you just type in those options.
And there are a lot of tools out there that
and
do
you
that.
just copy and paste the ones to go back to the main screen.
You can clone it, you can like edit it, you can take the entire decision tree and copy that and bring it to another decision tree and build on that.
So cool. I'm gonna go mess with this.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
So at IBM.
What's the URL for that?
So I would start off with, I would actually give you a different recommendation. At IBM, we have a hub for developers called IBM Code. And when you go there, you're able to get pre-written code and like step-by-step guides of how you can create your chatbot. So, and there's also tools associated with that. So if you want to create your own chatbot, you can go into IBM Code, and I would just Google like IBM Code chatbots and see what comes up.
Yeah.
And then you'll find a bunch of GitHub links with READMEs that have a step-by-step guide of what to do. You can click deploy the code, and it'll bring you to the Watson Assistant interface that has this decision tree. So you'll already have the dialogues and everything written, and then you can move things around in there.
Sweet.
Yeah. And then there's tools that I'm working on, my team is working on, that we're evolving to make this easier for bot developers. So something that I launched earlier this year, I guess late last year, is called the Bot Asset Exchange. So it is a marketplace for bot developers.
AKA Bay.
AKA Bay, yeah, Bay is Bay. I really tried to get shorts
What's
for
up,
before
Bay?
that.
That's so funny.
Bay is my Bay.
Bay is my Bay.
But yeah, you can go in and get this back-end conversation logic that different people have created, open source for you to use. So it's a community-driven chatbot development hub. And you can, if you want to build a bot for, to remind you to set intentions for the day, then you can go there and see if anyone's already built that, and you can grab that code, and then you can make it specific to you. If you want to build one that's for pizza ordering, you can do that. The Bot Asset Exchange has right now over 120 back-end conversation logics that you can use, stemming from like IT enterprise use cases to like fun ones like wine pairing and like what restaurant you should go to.
Whoa.
And it's growing. So like you can go download it, and once you create one, you can also upload it. It's a marketplace for bot conversations.
That's so cool. I'm in love.
I love that you're in love.
I'm in such love with this. Yes, smart people. Thank you. Okay, so I can't get over all of the different use cases and where it's going and how awesome it is to tie in like young people into this process. Okay, so I guess we did a little bit of the AR VR. Were you happy with where we like left with that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Because I know there's so much more to unpack in like all of these, and we could talk about each one of these for
AR VR
hours.
is like its own conversation, I would say.
Yeah. And I mean, we could keep going on all the different use cases that are being used for with the assistant right now. Okay. So tell us about the Girls Who Code. You're involved in Girls Who Code. You're on the Coding for Good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then I wanted to mention First Robotics to you as well, because it's an awesome organization for youth to get involved in coding and in building robots to complete objectives on playing fields, but also to like practice teamwork and all those skills. It builds really good people, like future leader people. So yeah, so tell us about your involvement in Girls in STEM.
Yeah, so I don't even know where to start. There's so many places I can get there. So I think people ask me like, hey, like people, meaning parents, will be like, I want my child to get involved. How do I get involved? Or there's girls in the world who want to get involved and they don't know where to start. So organizations like Girls Who Code and online resources that's available is very, very important. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, right now there's no formal education for computer science, any of that. Two, extracurriculars, which is usually where you would form these interests, are very catered to boys in a way. So to bring girls to like a coding camp I always tell people to find like an all-girl environment so it's inclusive, so they can cultivate their own interest and move forward. I think your environment and where you're in makes a huge difference. And like, you need to be surrounded by like-minded people that uplift you. And like, I mean, there's a total crisis in this in tech in a way. And I, as a product manager, I think about this a lot because like we talk about not enough software engineers, and software engineering is a very covertly genderized role. Like 18%, 19% of software engineers are women, which is actually less than it was almost 20 years ago.
And the reverse for nursing.
Yeah, and other things. There's also a really interesting stat about like women actually make up 70% of the workforce. But like less than 40% of it contribute to the GDP, which is, I think, really fascinating.
Whoa.
And for us to bridge that gap is going to take years and a lot of money.
Whoa.
So
every day more and more women are involved in work, and men are apparently doing some other shit that is not involved in work.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, sometimes, I guess. Sometimes in some cases. And then about the contribution to GDP is still skewed in favor of men, even though there's more women that are working.
Yeah, so how do you take all the right steps? And it starts very early on. Like people, so many factors determine where you end up in life, and that's your zip code, but your gender, toys you play with as a child, because it changes how you think and perceive the world.
How many times you're dropped as a baby?
Yeah. And I remember in my first engineering class at Berkeley, I like solved this problem set we had, and I took it to my GSI, and he looked at it and he was like, yeah, you could do it this way. You're not an engineer, are you? And I was like, what? He was like, yeah, I would solve it very differently, and this is how I would do it. But I thought of it differently, really, right? And like, that's why diversity is very important. Correct, because my brain was very different from the traditional engineering brain. It needs to like encourage different people and different mindsets and include it to solve the world's problems.
Yes, I totally agree. High five to that. That's such a good point. Diversity is crucial to solving the world's problems. Diversity of thought.
Absolutely. And that's why, going back to like girls who code, and you need to start them from an early age. And I'm a firm believer in like, you can't be what you can't see, and empowered women empower women. So you have to
what you can't see.
you have to give back, and you also have to push yourself forward so these people can, little girls can be like, I want to be this person, you know? So getting them started from an early age in an inclusive environment, doing cool things that they're interested in building, solving problems that they want to solve that's relevant to them is what's going to get them interested at an early age, and then, you know, go to college, feel the confidence they need, and come be contributing members of society and contribute to the GDP if we're looking at it in that angle.
I mean, we're amazingly right on track for that. I love it. I love it. It's been on track for that. It's been going on track for that. And there's Girls Who Code. You're doing Chatbots for Good. You want to tell us about that as well?
So Chatbots for Good is really a way for people to think of technology as not something that's coming to take over your job, and not, you know, be scary or something that you don't want to interact with, but rather it's showcasing the power behind these technologies. So chatbots, AR, VR, I consider them to be like empathy machines. Like you can literally be in another person's shoes when you're in AR, VR. But when you're in a chatbot, you can talk to a girl who is getting water in Uganda and just like learn what their experience is like. And they're being used to like, in a lot of different use cases for like fundraising, for learning about other parts of the world. So it's like having a conversation, right? But you can do it from your home, on your phone, on the go, anywhere. And it really makes the world a little bit smaller and makes your mind a little bit bigger. So like Chatbots for Good is like, how do you create empathetic chatbots that are like, one, functional, but also have a higher purpose and encourage other people to think in a different way and expand their mind.
Yeah. I like the example that you gave, that it does contract the world, but it expands our minds. I like that. I like being able to, and it doesn't require another person on the other end. It just, and it doesn't preclude other people from using the chatbot either, which is great. So like 1 million people can be using it at the same time. It's a lot of API calls.
But is it worth it?
Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. And that's where IBM makes that money. And that's where they pay you from. And that's like why they pay you the big bucks.
I get some bucks.
I get some bucks. Okay, and then and this is good. We have the first robotics as well that's bringing all. So the STEM field's exploding. Getting women involved, young girls involved is getting more and more thanks to great initiatives that you're a part of and that you're building. And okay, let's walk you down some of our simulation questions.
Okay.
Okay, all right. I'm interested to hear what you think about. There seems to be a lot of US and China and Russia, the kind of racing for AI, for biotech, for who's going to be superior in these fields. How do you think we should figure out how to work together as we globalize?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was actually reading an article in Bloomberg asking that same question this morning.
Oh, sweet. Hey, we're on the right track.
Yeah. And they were doing like interesting charts of how do you define the race, right? There's not really a tangible way to do that. It could be the number of patents in it. It could be the number of products or services that launch out of it. But I actually don't think that's the right answer. I think the right answer is like, how do we use AI to solve the most problems? And that's how we will determine, who's winning. And I don't think it's a matter of like country to country. It's a matter of like technology, again, brings us together, right? And how do we all work together to solve these problems? So it's what problems we're solving, what problems we all care about, and moving towards that, I think, is the right answer.
So to identify the problem on a global level and then try and pool resources in to solve that problem, rather than make it like it was made in this country and we're going to charge you 2 times as much because, I hear you there, and then I totally feel you and want that, and then there's also like this crazy other argument, which is that that the United States needs to be like the global leader of the world, and we need to make sure that like communism or the craziness of other nuclear war and other biowarfare doesn't occur, and the only way to ensure that is by us being the leader. And then so there's these fascinating like national globalization conversations that are occurring, and we always like to ask our guests about them. I'm glad you literally read about it this morning. That's so cool. I totally agree. Even though it might be based on a little bit on patents and like the amount of people using it a little bit, it's totally on like, have you solved a problem leveraging AI or leveraging biotech? Oh, you have? Oh shit, like already, like for example, we just had Josh Tetrick from Just on the show. Okay. And Just is a biotech company that makes eggs without eggs. They make, out of mung beans and stuff like that. And so, their products are in 150,000 stores. So, that's a pretty good distribution point. So if you think about it that way, then I think that impact in the field of biotech is super awesome. Maybe compared to somebody having a patent on some process that isn't even applying to anybody's life yet.
Here's the other thing that I think is a little tricky. We don't really have a definition for AI yet. Like when we refer to AI, most people traditionally think of it as machine learning or like data mining. But like, what is AI? And I think our definition of that is still evolving, which is why we're not even ready to answer that question, because what we think of AI in the US might be different from what people think of it in China or other places in the world.
Totally. And that comes back to the linguistics.
Yeah, yeah, it totally does. Full circle.
Full circle. Yes. Okay, so how about, what do you think we should do about wealth concentration? It's like 8 people have as much wealth as the bottom 4 billion. What do we do about this massive wealth inequality gap?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I've actually, I've thought of this a lot growing up too, because when I visit India, it's really interesting to see the stratification between the rich and poor there. It's worse than here. Like, the rich people have everything, and the poor people have nothing, and are what they have is being taken away all the time.
Is that really?
Yeah. Well, I'm from Calcutta.
Yeah,
so
you're from
it's a big city.
Yeah, that's out east.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in West Bengal, the state, but
Yeah.
it's in east of India.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a weird cognitive dissonance thing. I don't know if there's a right answer to that, right? Like what do I think of it? I don't know if that's like, should there be a gap in general? Like, should it be 1-to-1 always and everyone has equality? I don't know. Should the 8-to-1 that you described be like a 4-to-1? I don't know. I think so many things are like tentacle to each other from this system that we would really need to understand like holistically everything that would change and the ramifications of that if we were able to bridge the gap. And I think what we should start doing is going a little bit at a time maybe to get to equality and see what happens. I think there's good and bad in every system, right? Like there's good things in capitalism, there's bad things in capitalism. Same thing with like communism, right? So like, and it's also very subjective. So again, tough question. I don't think there's a right answer.
But society trying to solve that problem on a global level is, some people don't think it's a problem, but some people do.
I think like if you go back to like Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Yeah.
everyone should have the basics, right? So every single person should have food, shelter, all of that. And I personally believe in that. And then as you continue to grow up those levels, I think that's
But why
where,
shouldn't every person have self-actualization and self-transcendence?
I don't know. I think every person could. I don't even think everyone has the ability to get there, right? So
You don't think everyone has the ability to get there?
yeah, because I think you'll hit a mental block at some point, right?
Unless you open your mind even more.
Yeah.
And then you can get there?
Yeah, I think you have to work towards it.
Yeah, you do. Yeah,
Like
but so we do have the ability.
Yeah.
It's just not going
That's
to
right.
be given to you on a plate and then
Right.
you get to eat it. Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of plates that
Yeah.
you have to break along the way. Like, have you
Yeah.
ever seen that image of
No.
it's like a guy that juggles plates
Uh-huh.
and then there's a staircase going up to a stage.
Okay.
And then he's juggling the plates on the stage and there's a massive audience of 1,000 people watching him juggle plates. But on the stairs leading up to it, there are a bunch of broken
Interesting.
plates. So
Yeah.
he's broken the plates all the time leading up to when he's on stage juggling.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with anything that you do. I still fall on my face all the time
Yeah.
as an interlocutor, conversationist. And I'm totally open to it because that's how you become mastery. That's how you actually get there.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with developer tools and chatbots and
Yeah.
everything that you guys are building.
I'm also like, I'm a big believer in the butterfly effect. Like I think one thing will affect everything else. I also am a believer of that we're constantly evolving. Like you and I are more evolved individuals now than we were coming into this conversation.
Totally.
And that's why language evolved, right?
Yeah.
Like we exchange ideas and we talk and we communicate because it makes us better. And like if we go back to like Darwinian evolution, our survival is going to be better because we have more information. And if you go back to terms like we're not on speaking terms, it's because you don't like this person and you don't want them to evolve. Because it's sharing of information.
Ooh, damn, that is intense. What do you think, Ron?
How do you like those apples? No, you can't dance with everybody, and sometimes you help people. They may take you down the road, so you have to be careful. Kind of like natural selection type dealio.
Yeah, it's like if you don't like someone, you don't talk to them, and then you don't want them to evolve anymore. That's kind of crazy.
You can't help them.
Sometimes you can't. Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you just can't help
It's
it.
not that you don't want them to. You do want them to evolve, so you can come with us. Let's go. We're going to have a good time.
We're going to have a picnic out back.
But,
yeah.
they're just.
But they're like, I don't want to bring any salad or any goodies to the picnic. And you're like, no, but you have to. Like, here are ways to make salad. And then they're like, don't listen.
Yeah. And then will you go on a picnic with them later? I don't know.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. That's the conversations that happen around the world. And I do believe in the butterfly effect as well. But exactly. Even something like a digital zeros and ones being sent somewhere because you wanted a message someone about something, that can cascade so much more down the chain. Okay. How about, what do you think is the most beautiful thing in the world?
Ooh. Oh, what a great question. Most beautiful thing in the world. I find a lot of beauty and like solace in feeling small.
Yeah.
So like the world is really big, right? Like everywhere, the world is really big, and then the universe is big, and there's galaxies, and we actually don't know. So like being able to pause and reflect on that and realize that you're, like so small in everything, I think is very beautiful. And something so small can have such massive impacts on other people, create art, have different, like the ideas of thoughts. Like everything is a social construct. And I think like just stopping to think about how big and small, like that dichotomy, I think is beautiful. Something so small can create something so big.
I'm really happy you said that.
Yeah?
Yeah, I've been working on shattering the ego for a long time, whether it's through meditation or through psychedelics, or there's so many different ways to do the practice, but once you've done it, or even looking at the stars, right? Yeah. Once you do this practice over and over and over again, it just expands your mind in ways that you can't go back to being so egocentric. And then even when you do have to be egocentric, like even right now we're being kind of egocentric as we're talking on the show, but we're doing it playfully, like we're dancing through conversation and that kind of thing versus needing to be all like, that actually the word that you said didn't make sense in that sentence because of that kind of a thing. So,
and I think like 100% agree with you. And then when you can step back and just like be happy, and I think there's different states of happy. There's like joy, bliss, happiness, right? Like what is it that you actually want, and like identifying that for yourself and just truly just being happy, I think is beautiful.
Yep. And that's, you got to get past those mental barriers that are preventing you from actualization and transcendence like you were mentioning earlier. Okay, how about, do you think there's some meaning or purpose to life?
Yeah, I think so.
What is it?
I think the meaning or purpose to life is to find your meaning or purpose to life. I think it's individualized. I think every single person has their own life purpose, or you call it whatever you want. I think this goes back to the butterfly effect, and all of us are like, everyone plays a role, and they have something to contribute. And I think one of my flaws, but also one of my strengths, is I'm very trusting. So whenever I meet someone, I'm like, you're a great person, and I accept them into my life. And that's also true with technologies, right? Like new technologies come out, I'm like, I'm gonna try this out. And I trust everything. So I do think that, like, just like in the spirit of being trustful, is that a word, trustful?
Yeah. Trusting, trustful.
Yeah. Full of trust, is that everyone has a reason that they're walking into my life, or we were, put together in this situation, and there's meaning to it.
It's good to say that, because then it gives you more like, I'm more driven, like it gives you power, right? Versus just being like, oh, that was so pointless. Doesn't feel like it gives me power, right? So I want to say the thing that gives me power, even though philosophically it might be, there is no meaning.
What do you mean by power?
When you do say that what is happening for your own transcendence and for other people's transcendence, and just this powerful collective and individualistic force, that gives me energy to just function and be and bring myself to the world. And versus if we were just saying that it's all meaningless, that was meaningless, it's whatever. And then that's like, that doesn't give me any power.
I also think, like, as humans, we all need something to believe in, right? So if you don't have that belief, that's why like religion exists and other things exist. I think it's because you need something, whether it be a philosophy or something. And like, for me, what I believe in is other people, and their purpose and my purpose and the meaning of life in a way.
What is something that you believe to be true that nobody else believes to be true?
I feel like I shared most of them already. I think that the fact that we're constantly evolving is something that a lot of people will disagree with. Because most people would say like it's discrete moments or something like that, and I think it's a minute by minute thing, second by second thing. I'm a believer in mind-body dualism, and I don't think everyone believes in that.
Explain
so like,
that.
if your brain and my brain swapped, who's Alan and who's Anamita?
What was that? Can you say that again?
So if your brain, Alan, swaps with my brain, Anamita, which one of us is Alan, which one of us is Anamita? So I'm a firm believer in the mind and the body being separate things.
But the nervous system is also concentrated in places like your
and that's
gut.
and that's where like it's a big debate, because like the brain and the mind, I also think are different things.
I like that question though. That's a good question.
Yeah.
So what's your answer to that question then?
So I would argue
that you'd be Alan.
I'd be wherever my brain or my mind is.
Yeah.
That's Anamita.
Yeah. So you would be yeah. Oh, but you would be your brain in my body.
Yeah. There's actually a lot of really interesting studies done in VR.
What if the consciousnesses got intertwined in some way, like my gut neurons were working with your brain neurons and.
Yeah, but we're constantly evolving.
But
so
like,
now
what
my
if the
brain's now evolving to that.
Yeah, but what if then the consciousnesses would intertwine with like a certain percentage?
So
like a majority of your percentage would be taken, but you'd still have some of my percentage.
I would pose you with the question of what is consciousness, right? And then I think we might have different definitions.
I think everybody on the planet has different definitions to that.
Yeah, and nobody really knows.
One of my friends, Leo Madrid, who was just on the show, he answered that question with life force.
What does that mean?
The force of life.
Okay.
That's what consciousness is, the force of life. So even an animal has force of life.
I think animals have
and then
consciousness.
even a plant has force of life.
I don't know if I would agree with that. Do you need a brain to have consciousness? Do you need some sort of like neural net?
I'm pretty sure that a plant has no neurons, right?
Nope.
Okay, but then a plant still photosynthesizes.
Yeah. And they do like phototropism, they like respond to their environment.
Yeah.
Are they consciously doing that? What is consciousness?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So maybe, he said life force. We've heard other things on the show, but that is one of our questions, is what is consciousness?
Yeah.
I'm glad that you
I asked you.
You don't believe in the mind, you don't believe in mind-body dualism, or
I
do believe in mind-body dualism.
Yes,
Yeah, you
I think
do.
the mind and the body are separate.
Are separate. Mm-hmm. Damn, you're like super contrarian to like a lot of the whole like, mind, body, like, spirit, this all.
I mean, right now my mind and body are very connected, right? And this is who I am. But there's actually a very interesting VR experiment that's been done where like you and I can be back to back, and we're wearing VR headsets, and I'm seeing what you would actually be seeing, and you are seeing what I'm seeing. So it tricks our brain into like if I look down, I'm seeing your arms, and if you look down, you're seeing my arms. And how does that change your brain, right? I'm still Anamita, I think, when I do that, but I'm learning what it's like to be Alan and Anamita, right?
Oh, yeah. And then the more you get better at that, maybe the more that you can learn how to empathize with other people around the world, being in their bodies and their shoes, etc.
Yeah. There's also like, do you know about the phantom arm?
Yeah.
So like, I mean, there's so many things that can be done, and you can. I think the mind is the most powerful thing, and then everything else is kind of like a feature of it. Like if we're thinking in tech terms, right? The mind is the product, and then everything else is a feature of it.
But how close is the heart to the mind in terms of the importance?
I think that's a different question, right? Like I think the heart is connected to the brain, and the brain is connected to the mind, and the mind is what we perceive. The brain and the heart are working in different ways. So when your heart's racing, it's making a signal to the brain, and then the mind picks it up as like, oh, I'm like maybe nervous in this situation, or did I drink too much coffee today?
This is your mind is the interpretation. But at the same time, the heart beats and emanates that pulse through energy, through waves, through vibration. Brain doesn't do that. Brain has electricity, but
yeah, I don't know. Like, do you do yoga?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so like you're in Shavasana or in any pose, right? Your body can be in complete stillness, but your mind can be racing.
That happens all the time.
Right.
All the time.
Mind-body dualism.
Okay. Okay, fair. That's a pretty
You
good
asked me
example.
what no one agrees with,
yeah,
right?
that's why we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we like the black sheep that are running in the direction that the 99 are running in the different direction. We totally love that. That's why we talk about this and ask that question, because it's usually the 99 sheep are right.
Yeah.
But in the times that the black sheep is right, it's always very fascinating because they're the only one that's thinking it, and then we try and think about that. So.
I don't think there's a right or wrong here. It's just what I think.
Yeah, that last
it's
example is good
different from what
because
you think.
I think everyone's felt, even if you haven't done yoga, you felt when you're laying in bed and your body's completely still, but your mind is going way too fast for you to go to sleep. So, yeah. Okay, and do you think we're alone in the cosmos?
No.
Expand
I don't have
a bit.
any, like, I have no concrete evidence, but I think I just want to believe there's other things out there.
Yeah. Does it inspire you to think that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it'd be so cool in like 40 years where we're like, we made contact with another civilization, and then there's another way for us to communicate and like learn from them and all
Exactly.
of that.
I know that.
It's just
I love
an exciting
that too.
thought.
Yeah, me too. Do you think there's another? Do you think there's another Anamita and Alan speaking in another parallel universe right now?
I wouldn't say no immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be really cool.
Yeah. I thought that during our conversation,
Yeah,
actually.
I used to think, so this is like me being like a crazy child. When I used to play Barbies, I had all these like worlds created for Barbies, and it was just like how I like would imagine things. And for a portion of my like childhood, when I was like 4 or 5, I was convinced that like there was like an Anamita or like a godlike figure that was like determining our day-to-days and just playing with us, like we were a toy in someone else's world. Like I created this world and I was controlling everything around it.
Perfect. Yeah, and then that same thing was going on in the meta.
Yeah, and it was just like,
it's
you know, like a Coca-Cola cup holding, right?
Yeah. That's good. You had that when you were how old?
When I was playing with Barbies, when I was like 4 or 5.
4 or 5. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do.
That was my
do you see
philosophy
these
of life.
Barbies that you're controlling right now? There's another thing that's controlling you doing this right now. Yeah, and just keep
In a
going.
parallel universe.
In a parallel universe. On top.
It never ends.
Do you think that we're in base reality or computer simulation?
Base reality.
Why are you so sure?
Because I watched The Truman Show, and that's what I made the decision after, because I thought about it for a good chunk of time. I don't have a reason, it's just what I think.
Anamita Guha, such a pleasure.
Yeah,
thank you
for having
so
me.
much. Thank you.
Two hands.
Thank you. Maybe we do a little connect.
Another one? Let's do a different hand.
Let's do a
Change
different
it up.
hand, yeah. This is nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure. Let's get more people using IBM's developer tools around the world.
Go to developer.ibm.com.
Developer.ibm.com. Links in bio. /code.
And you'll get all the code. It'll be great.
And you'll get all the code, and hopefully we take something cool from the conversation. And if you did take something cool from the conversation, share it with other people. And like, comment, subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. Hopefully we'll be doing more conversations with the Watson team, and we'll strike up a cool partnership moving forward. And I know that'll be very interesting for all you guys. You guys love AI and robotics and the future and machine learning and chatbots and VR and AR. They love all this stuff. So to be able to work with IBM would be such a pleasure on a longer scale. So, and also join us on Patreon. We need to pay for our studio, our electricity, our food, our team, our all this stuff, so to equipment to make a safe space for our guests. So join us on Patreon, we'd greatly appreciate it. And we'll catch you guys in about 30 minutes or so with Dr. Aubrey de Grey speaking about health and aging and fighting aging. So thank you very much.